Hey guys, it's Tom here, and this is going to be the first of a series of videos I'm going to be making about Hitfilm Express, which is a video editing software I use. It's absolutely free and it's an incredible bit of software. So to start off, you can literally just type in Hitfilm Express into Google. It's this one here, so fxhome.com. Now Hitfilm has two packages. They've got Hitfilm Pro, which is the paid version, and then Hitfilm Express. I don't actually know what additional features you get in the Pro version, probably because I'm not a professional editor, but the Express version has a ton of features that, to be honest, I really can't see anything that's missing from it to get really high quality videos and post-processing effects and editing, all sorts. It's an absolutely brilliant piece of software. The only thing I will say is it's maybe slightly harder to use than some of the paid applications you can get, like Final Cut Pro and some of the Adobe software suites. But for the money that you're saving, it's just a no-brainer for me. So all you need to do is click Get Hitfilm Express and you'll create an account on here. Send me to the Express download, and away you go. I've actually already got Hitfilm installed, so let's just jump into it now. So this is the first screen that you're going to be presented with when you open up Hitfilm, and this is absolutely awesome in itself. So in the home screen, you've got a whole bunch of tutorial videos from some of the guys at Hitfilm, and you can learn how to do effects. There's all sorts of cool stuff, like you can get lightsaber clashing effects, lightning things like they use in Thor. This is a really cool one as well, actually. And this is another thing that I love about Hitfilm, is that there's so many tutorials on YouTube of how to use Hitfilm and some of the effects you can do, the transitions. And that's how I've learned it. I've learned it literally just by trial and error, playing about with things, watching tutorials on YouTube. So just put the time in, have a look at the videos, try and figure some stuff out for yourself, and you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. What I wanted to do with this series actually was just to sort of put everything together in a nice playlist, so you've got, from the very basics up to some of the more advanced things like animation that you can do and stuff like that. But I don't want to overwhelm you, so I'm going to try and put it into little bite-sized chunks to make it a bit easier to follow. So just to start with then, so if you want to start a new project, you literally just click on New here. You've also got a bunch of templates here as well. To be honest, I always go for 1080p full HD at 30 frames per second. You can do 60 if you want. It's going to be slightly harder on the rendering itself. If you've got a decent spec PC or laptop, you should be absolutely fine either way. I tend not to use these ones. If I want to convert anything to square video to make it mobile friendly for social media or anything like that, I'll usually just download it in 1080p and then I'll export it, put it on my phone and put it into an application like InShot, which just resizes the video perfectly. You can put your text and your subtitles and things like that. But if you wanted to play about with it, you've got a whole bunch of options here. You can do 4K rendering. Obviously that's going to be slightly more demanding on your PC or laptop. But this is the option I go for. It's the default one, 1080p full HD. Again, this is just the size and the aspect ratio of the video, the frame rate, etc. If you don't know what frame rate is basically just the speed that the video is running at, so the amount of frames that are played on the screen per second. You won't really notice a difference between 30 and 60. Most YouTube videos, I think, play back in 30 frames per second. Maybe it's 24, but you wouldn't really notice a difference. I mean, frame rate only really comes into effect with very sort of fast moving sports or maybe video games. That's the only time you'd really need to worry about that, if you're game streaming, for example. Don't worry about this, this is all pretty standard. Anti-aliasing just gets rid of any jagged edges on the picture, but that's set to 4 times as standard anyway. So yeah, all you need to do then is click Start Editing and we'll have our first project set up. Now just to start at the top, you'll notice you've got the Home button, which will just take you back to the home screen. Project, where you can just review the settings that you set up initially. Edit is the main screen you're going to be using, so that's where you put your timeline, everything else. And then export is just where any projects that you've exported will end up in here, so you can then start rendering them, but we'll touch on that later. Okay, so first couple of things to note here. This is your viewer. So this is where you're going to be viewing the project that you've currently got open down here. So this is a timeline. This is where you're going to be putting all your clips, any audio tracks or anything like that. So as you see here, we've got video 1, which is where you'll add your first video. If the video has audio, it will automatically put in the video and audio tracks here, so you can view them as separate tracks. The trimmer, it was basically where you can see anything that you've got queued up in here. So this is where you're going to import all your media. So whether it be pictures or video files, audio files, you're going to import all of the ones you need here for your particular project, and then you can just literally drag and drop them onto the timeline, and the playback of the timeline will be done here. So I hope that makes sense. So let's just go ahead and open something up to give you an example. Okay, so this is a video that I actually made using Hitfilm just recently. So what you'll do is you'll click on this once it's imported, drag it onto the timeline. You want to place it right at the start here, so it should say start time 000. So just make sure you drag that into the right position, and then you'll see here that you've got your separate audio track and then the video track as well. Now these are linked, so whenever you move them, they will move as one. You just literally click and drag here. However, it's worth noting that you can separate these. If you right click on them and go to unlink and then click out and click back onto one, you can actually move them separately if you needed to. So if, for example, you may be recording your audio separately to get better sound quality, you might be using a lapel microphone or something like that, that's where you then bring in the audio separately, and you can actually match up the wavelengths, the waveforms on the audio track here, but I'll go into that in a separate video. This bar here is the sound for the audio, so how loud it's going to play, and you have got another one here on the video, that's just how bright that video is going to show. So you'll see now if we just click play in the preview bar here.
I ask you, what do you do, or what does your company do?
And that's the preview of the video. Another thing to note in terms of navigation of the timeline itself, if you hold down Control on your keyboard and just scroll in, you can actually zoom in here. Probably going to be different on a Mac, but if you can also click this little button down here and you can zoom into the timeline, so you can see sort of finer detail. So if you wanted to do some fine editing or trimming, so for example, if you've got bits here where you'll be able to see,
how would you respond
over a particular bit of audio? So if you were to shoot a video and you had lots of ums and ahs in it, you can actually take those out. So I'll show you how to do that now. So what we'd do is, if we wanted to take out this bit, in fact, let me just, because I've got these two separated, haven't I? I'm just going to join these back together. Link, slice. Okay, there. Now it's sliced both of them. They'd normally be joint anyway, so if you did want to slice them, it would usually slice the both of them. So we're then going to go to the end of that wave. So we're just going to click up here, drag it across, right click and slice again. Okay, so now we've got both of those sliced, we can just click on this section here and press delete. So if we now drag these two back in to connect the two together and we just play that again, you'll notice that bit's missing.
See, if you were about...
And another thing you'll notice as well is that there's a bit of a cut there. We'll go into transitions in another video because there's a bit of an art to trying to get cuts and the perfect timing. Sometimes it can look quite stylistic if, you know, depends what approach you're going for in your video. You know, you'll obviously, if you want it to be a smooth transition, you'll need to ensure, you know, you're in the same position, your facial expressions are the same, so it can be quite hard to get that exact. But we'll go into that in another video anyway. In this video, I just want to give you an overall idea of the layout, how everything works. Over here, you'll notice you've got a few additional things. You've got some things like effects, transitions, so you can add transitions between these cuts. So I'll just show you this as a quick example now. So we've got a transition here called fade to color. So what that means is that the screen will fade black and then fade back in. Now with transitions, you can either add them to the end of a clip where you'll see it there, the little square where that clip ends, where it was cut, or we can add it between the two, and what that will effectively do is transition between the two clips, so it will fade to black and then fade open again.
Go on and tell me.
Now another thing just to point out here is you will notice the playback, depending on how powerful your PC or laptop is, the playback can appear quite slow and juddery. It's not going to come out like that once it's processed. It's just because your PC is trying to render this all and all of the effects in real time. It can be quite taxing. You'll notice you do have options up here, so you can actually change the playback quality, the playback resolution. But you will probably notice, unless you've got a very powerful PC, that it's not going to play back as smooth as it does. In order to export the video, this is on the latest version of Hitfilm, so they've actually moved this button recently, but it's just a button here at the moment. So when you're done and you actually want to export and start rendering your clip, you just click on this button down here, export, and you've got two options here. You've got in and out area. So the in and out area is basically this whole section here. So you'll notice I can actually drag this in. So this part that's shaded light grey is your in and out area. So if you were to click to export that, you'd end up with your video, and then you'd just have a black screen for the rest of it here. Whereas if we click on contents, it's only going to export up to the point your content ends. When you click to export it, you'll be presented with a screen like this. So you'll have your video up here. This is just a list of all of my previous ones. I should actually clear this. I'll just say remove finished tasks. And there's our video. So what we do is we go down here where we got the video. You can change the name by double clicking on it. So you just type a new file name in there. So I'll just say test, save that. And then we're going to right click on it and click force start. Or you can just click start exporting here, and that's going to export everything that's lined up in your queue. And once that's done, you'll be able to view the file from the saved location. So that's just a little basic tool for now. So let's just import a few extra bits here. Okay, so I've just imported an audio track here. Now, on the note of audio and music, soundtracks, etc., there's a bunch of royalty-free sites that you can use out there. So things like Bensound. Bensound's got a really good website, actually. Pretty much all the tracks on there are royalty-free. Royalty-free means that you don't have to pay or give any royalties to the artist. You might have a license fee for some of them, but these tracks don't actually have a license fee either, so you can just download them. The only thing he does ask is that you credit him in any YouTube videos or Facebook posts and things like that. You can run into some issues with copyright when you're uploading sort of big songs or chart songs over your videos on YouTube and Facebook, but generally they don't really tend to mind so much unless you're trying to monetize it. So if you're actually trying to or are making money out of it, then you could be in a lot of trouble. If it's just your own little family video or whatever, they're not going to mind a massive amount. You might get a little flag up on YouTube with a little copyright symbol on there, which actually bans monetizing the track anyway. This probably isn't going to work very well because I've actually got some music over this video already, but what we need to do is on the audio section, we can just right click here and insert track. So now we've got another track, so we can just name this soundtrack music. And then all we need to do is literally drag this track on here. We'll obviously want to make sure it's in line with the video, so we can just choose the length of it here to make sure it finishes where the video finishes. Now, another thing that's quite nice to do as well when you're starting a video is just to have a little effect to bring that video in. I've actually got one on this video anyway. This isn't really a great example, but what we do is we put a fade here just so that video can start off, and we'll also fade in the music as well. So you'll see there's transitions here. Again, this is under effects. So you've got transitions, audio, fade. So we'll just drag this across onto the soundtrack, and then that will fade the sound in, so it's not going to start very suddenly. So if we play that back now, oh, that's actually really loud. So this is another thing. You'll notice that sometimes the music track itself might be a lot louder than the recording you've made. If that's the case, you can just bring the audio down here. Let's just extend this a little bit as well. So what this is going to do is this is going to extend the fade. So how long it takes that music to gradually build up in volume. So let's give this a try.
If I was to ask you, what do you do?
Sounds a bit better.
What is your company?
So you see how that fades in. Again, that gets quite loud, so we might need to have it a bit quieter. But you'll just play about with this because different audio tracks and video tracks are going to have slightly different volumes on them. So you might just have to play about with it. And then the other thing that's quite nice to do as well is just do the same thing at the end of the track. So we can just fade the audio out and fade the video out as well. So when that video finishes, you've just got a nice fade out.
You can help their life.
So another one of the things you're probably going to want to do with your video is to add text. Now, text is slightly more complicated. What we need to do with text is add something called a composite shot. So under the media section, we're just going to right click here, new, and then new composite shot. So we'll click on that. This is just the details of the composite shot. So we want to keep it the same template as the actual video itself. This is the duration of the composite shot. It's not, doesn't really matter too much because we can just drag that in on the timeline anyway. Click OK. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can set up text. We can either have the text appear on a black screen. So if you wanted to maybe have a little intro to your video, we might want it to appear on a black screen. Now, by default, where you haven't set a background or a plane it's called, it will come out black anyway. But if you wanted it to be white, there's another thing we have to do here. So this is in your composite shot timeline now. So this is, you'll notice this is separate from your main timeline. So just keep an eye on that and which timeline you're in. So when we're under our composite shot, if you wanted the text to appear on a white background, what we're going to do is right click here, new layer, and then we'll set up a plane first. Now the plane is just the background. As I say, if it's black you want, you don't need to worry about it because it's going to appear black as default even without a plane being on there. But if you want to set it as white or any other color for that matter, you can just choose white here. Okay, and now we've got a white background. And then what we'll do, right click again, new layer and text. This is the size of the text box. So let's make this a bit bigger so that it's 1200. You can adjust this all manually as well, so don't worry about getting it right the first time. Oh, that's a bit too big actually. So what you'll do with this, you can drag this box and move it. Now, in order to actually shrink this in, we're just going to go over to this tab here. We're going to click on text. And then if we click on this tiny little square circle here, you can just click that and drag and change the size of this text box. Now, it's a bit annoying because we can't now move it. You have to click back on this again to drag it. Okay, so now we've got the positioning right. We can just click on text again. Now, in order to edit the text and change your fonts and colors, we're going to go under this panel here again and click text. You've got your fonts here, text size here. This is your text color. I think this is the text color. Yes. So we're going to click in here and then we're going to say hello. And we'll just highlight this, make it a bit bigger, maybe center it, set it to bold, and then we're just going to reposition it on the screen by clicking this thing again. If you wanted to, I don't know why you'd want to, but you could maybe flip it upside down. So this little tool here just allows you to rotate the actual text box itself or an image or whatever you had in here. So we're just going to put that there. Now, as an example, let's just go back to editor, zoom out on this, highlight all the tracks here, move them across. Now we go back to our media and you'll notice a composite shot has now been added to media. So it can be useful as well just to rename this and say hello text. And then we can drag this onto our timeline here. Let's just make sure, yeah. So we're just going to drag this like so. You'll notice it's got an audio track as well. Unless you put audio in there, obviously nothing's going to play, so I wouldn't worry about that. And we're just going to drag these back. Audio. So if you wanted the audio to begin after the text, you can put it here. You'll notice this is quite handy actually. There's a red line which tells you when it's lined up with a particular section. So you'll know you're adding it to the right place. So let's put it here. And then what we'll do is we'll just add another fade effect between these two to transition them. And then if we play this, and then it will fade into the video. And then if you wanted to, you could also put another fade just at the start as well. Now you can also add text over the video, so while you're talking. Now in order to do that, obviously you don't want to have a plane there. Now because I've actually changed the main composite shot, it's going to have changed this live. So if you wanted to make two separate ones, we would have had to have kept that one and then created a separate composite shot to have as an overlay. So you might want to have one that says text overlay and another one that says text intro, for example. But because I've changed this, we can literally just add this over the top. And then there you have it. You've got your text over the video. And then what we can do is we can just click on this inside the little box and we can just move this about on the video like so.
Knowledgeable about.
You'll notice that just pops up. So you can have that pop up at a particular point in the video. So if there's a certain part in the video where you want that text to overlay, maybe just to emphasize what you were saying or point you were making, then you can just make sure that all times up. You can shuffle these about again afterwards. What might even be a better idea, and probably something I should do, but when you start up a video or a new project, it might just be worth factoring in what you're looking to include in the video and then setting up all of these video and audio tracks to begin with. So if you know you're going to want some sound effects, create one for sound effects. Then you're going to want a music track, create another one for the music track. Then you're going to want one maybe for miscellaneous or whatever it might be. So just add those in beforehand and then add in your video track. So you've got like a text layer, you've got a video layer, you've got an effects layer, you've got images and stuff like that that you can add on to there. Just another thing to say actually as well is you can get quite creative with this, but let's say for example where we have this, just scroll up here, where we have this text layer, you can get quite creative, and if you wanted to, you could maybe add in some little sound effects to have that text come in. So there's actually a few websites you can use where you can get little audio clips from for free. So if we just type in free audio clips, pop effect, pop sound effects. Here we go. This is quite a good website actually, and then you can just preview them here. There you go. That's a nice little one. So we can just click on that, click the WAV file, download it, and then again we just import that like we usually would of anything. So if I just click save as, save this to desktop, if we just go to import, and we've got that file, and then all we need to do is we can actually delete this. So let me just unlink this. Let me just delete the audio track for this composite shot. And then I'll just drag this in here. Now we line it up here so it's in line with the text. So hopefully when we play this back, we've got a little pop
knowledgeable about a particular subject
when the text pops up, which is quite cool. Another thing to notice as well, another thing to try not to get caught out on, is when you do have quite a lot of tracks running, just make sure you're on the right section. So you'll notice here I'm scrolling up and down because I've got the video track selected, so I'm scrolling up and down between the video tracks. If you want to scroll up and down between audio, you need to move your cursor to this section, and then you can scroll up and down between the audio tracks, because I've got caught out on this before when I think I've scrolled down on video but I've scrolled on audio. So just keep a mental note of that to know where your cursor is, so know when you're scrolling up on your video tracks, because when you have quite complex videos it can get quite busy, so you just need to know what's going on in your timeline. You'll also find as well, when you're adding a lot of different effects, pictures, overlays, text and things, this can all get quite busy with different composite shots and stuff like that. So you can just actually close them off when you're done with it. And then if you wanted to edit it again, you can just literally double click on this composite shot here and it will just pop it back up again. So it's just a few things to keep an eye out on. It can be quite overwhelming to begin with. So I'm probably going to draw this one to a close, and I'll be back with a few more tutorials. I don't know what's going to come next. I'm going to leave it as a surprise, but that should give you plenty to play around with for now. As always, if you've got any questions or feedback, leave it in the comments below. If you like the video, give it a like and make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll speak to you guys very soon.